Could Mason Rudolph be on his way to Foxborough? I'm going to be breaking that down here in just a second. And then also, the Pittsburgh Steelers have made multiple roster moves today, including signing veteran cornerback Desmond King. I've got a scouting report on him that you're not going to want to miss. And then also, I have every Steelers practice squad signing today. I'm going to be letting you know all the players that the Steelers brought on their practice squad. But before I get into today's action, make sure you are subscribed to the channel, because if the Steelers make another move, you're going to want to be subscribed, because we are going to have breaking news coverage here on Steelers Talk. We've already had a bunch of breaking news videos over the last couple of days. If it happens again and Omar Khan still has more in store for us here in the coming hours, make sure you're subscribed and turn on your notifications. Now let's talk about Mason Rudolph, and the trade rumors have been swirling around the third string quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers here, where New England, apparently their head coach, Bill Belichick, loves Mason Rudolph and is considering offering Omar Khan, the Steelers GM, a package here to land Mason Rudolph in Foxborough, because if you haven't been following the New England Patriots, they cut every single quarterback on their roster not named Mac Jones. So there's still an opening on their 53-man roster for a backup quarterback. They did bring back Bailey Zappi and Malik Cunningham on their practice squad, but as of right now, on their 53, they still have room to make a trade for a backup quarterback. Now, throughout his career, Mason has been pretty pedestrian, right? 16 touchdowns to 11 interceptions, 17 games played throughout his career, and just over 2,000 yards passing. He's definitely not the best quarterback in the league, but he's somebody that's got a decent arm. He's a decent mental processor. He gets the ball generally where it needs to go. And as a backup quarterback, he's fine, right? He didn't have the best preseason or training camp with the Steelers this year, but he's somebody that's a very good number 3 quarterback option. And here's the thing, man. If New England is willing to deal here and they're willing to send another draft pick to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Omar Khan feels like Mason Rudolph doesn't really have a future here, I am all for making a deal here if it benefits the Pittsburgh Steelers long term. Now, I think that what New England would probably want to do is like a 6th or a 7th round pick for Mason. And, if it's a 6th round pick, I might consider it. It might have to be a 5th round pick for Omar Khan, just because I know Omar is going to want to squeeze every last bit of juice he can out of this potential deal. But just keep your eye on a potential Mason Rudolph trade here before the start of the 2023 season. Obviously, no guarantees. The Patriots, there's a lot of quarterbacks being rumored to the Patriots via trade after what they did on their initial 53-man roster, but I think this is definitely something to keep in mind. Now, if Bill Belichick offered this trade offer to you, a 6th round pick in exchange for third-string quarterback Mason Rudolph, what are you doing? Are you accepting this trade offer, or are you declining it? Type A if you're accepting, or D if you're declining. This is going to be the pinned comment on today's show. So YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. Take advantage of that time by answering today's pinned question. So, in other news for the Pittsburgh Steelers today, the punter Braden Mann was cut after the signing of cornerback Desmond King on Wednesday morning. And, it was definitely weird on Tuesday when we saw the initial 53-man roster, and there was 2 punters on there. I mean, no NFL team does that ever. Now, I think what happened was Omar Khan, the GM, was trying to trade Braden Mann probably to the Philadelphia Eagles. Nothing surfaced, and because of that, they saw Desmond King available on the waiver wire. They picked him up, and they ended up releasing Braden Mann as the casualty on the roster. Now, I think this move creates 2 big questions for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Number 1, will the Steelers really carry 7 cornerbacks this year? Because right now, that is the case on their 53. And then the second question is, could the Steelers perhaps sign a backup center here if they want to release one of the current corners on their depth chart? And right now, you got 7 guys in the room. You got Patrick Peterson, Levi Wallace, and we don't know for sure that Desmond King is going to be the starter in the slot, but that's probably what's going to end up happening, in my opinion. I do like Chandon Sullivan. I do like Elijah Riley as well. But if you're getting a guy like Desmond King, who has a ton of experience in this league playing in the slot, and last year he actually graded out pretty darn well, I think that's definitely something that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to consider moving forward. So now, What about that second question? Could the Steelers perhaps sign a backup center next? Like if you wanted to cut James Pierre, if you wanted to cut Elijah Riley or cut Chandon Sullivan, here's the guys that could potentially be an option. Now, I will say right now that just before we started filming, Jimmy Morrissey and Tyler Larsen were both picked up on practice squads. I think Jimmy was on the Houston Texans, and then Tyler Larsen went back to the Washington Commanders. So apologies for those two names no longer being available. But Ben Jones, Dalton Reisner, and then Tristan Colon, somebody on the New York Jets preseason roster this year that actually played pretty darn well in the preseason, could be something. Could be someone that the Pittsburgh Steelers have their eye on here if they want to replace Kendrick Green as the backup center after they sent Green and Kevin Dotson away via trade this week. And, I would love to get Ben Jones, but that's definitely probably not a possibility. He's a starting capable player. He's somebody that started a bunch of these games. I don't think he's going to want to go somewhere where he's going to be a backup. Now, coming up here on the show, I've got the new cornerback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Desmond King. I've gone over the film. I've gone over all the stuff from last season, and I've got my official scouting report to share with you guys here on today's show. But before I get into that, let's have a word from our sponsor of today's show, BetUS, and they're offering you guys a fantastic deal right before the start of the 2023 season. A 125% deposit bonus on deposits of $100 to $600 when you go to chatsports.com/bet and use promo code Steelers125. Now, you might be asking, Jack, what is a deposit bonus? Well, here's what will happen. You put in a deposit of $100 to $600, and BetUS is going to give you 125% of that money back to you to use on your bet. So if you put in $100, they're going to give you $125 additional dollars to use on your bet. So you can go to chatsports.com/bet right now and use promo code Steelers125 to take advantage of that deal right now. That's chatsports.com/bet. All right, now let's talk a little bit about Desmond King here. And my scouting report is that he definitely provides inside-outside versatility, kind of like Cam Sutton with the Pittsburgh Steelers last year, how he can play in the slot and he can play outside. Desmond King is a very similar player to that. And he's also known around the league, and I can confirm this by watching his film today, that he is a very physical player in the slot. He's a great blitzer as well, a decent tackler. He kind of took a little bit of a fall last year with the Houston Texans in his tackling, but traditionally in his career, he's been a pretty darn good tackler, very physical at the line of scrimmage, which of course Mike Tomlin loves in his cornerbacks. And last year, a 73.2 overall PFF grade. And speaking of his grades last season, overall 73.2 is a very good grade. That would have been the highest on the Pittsburgh Steelers roster last year. His run defense was at 70, pass rush at an 80, so he's a really good blitzer from the slot. And then his coverage was at 71.8, which is still a very good grade for somebody that's in the slot against all those shifty types of receivers. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what he's going to be able to do in the slot for the Steelers this season. Whether or not he's going to start, we will see. But somebody with this amount of experience and this much of a pedigree, I would assume he's going to be out there week one versus the 49ers. And, something to keep in mind about Desmond is that he would have been the highest graded cornerback on the Pittsburgh Steelers last season. Last year's number one corner for the Steelers, Cam Sutton, only had a PFF grade of 71.6, and Desmond King, still only 28 years old, so it's not like he's an old man or anything. He had a 73.2 grade last year with the Houston Texans, and he was their number one corner, playing both on the outside and on the inside. So I'm super excited to see what King is going to be able to do with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think Omar Khan has yet another awesome signing here, bringing in a guy that's versatile, somebody that can move around the defense, somebody that's got a ton of experience, and somebody that's extremely physical. He fits what the Steelers want to do. You're getting him for cheap. He's still relatively young at 28 years old. He's definitely not a young buck anymore, but he's definitely a solid veteran that still has his athleticism with him. You might even be able to get a couple more years out of him. I'm super excited for Desmond King's future here in the city of Bridges. But another two questions come up from this signing for me. Number one, will Desmond King start in the slot for the Pittsburgh Steelers right away? Chandon Sullivan and Elijah Riley both had strong preseasons. So is Desmond King, who just got cut from a team, really going to be coming in? And speaking of that status of him being cut by the Houston Texans, Why did the Texans release him? Is there something wrong with him? Does he have an injury? Was he really bad in the preseason and in training camp? There's a bunch of questions here as to why the Houston Texans would release a guy like this when he was their number one cornerback last year. But overall, when I look at the guy's film, he's a pretty darn good player, so I am excited to see what he can do with the black and gold this season. Now, let me know what you think of the newest Steelers signee here by getting into the comment section and answering this question. Will Desmond King start in the slot week 1 versus the 49ers? Give me a yes or give me a no down there in the comment section. Can't wait to see how you're feeling about the newest Steelers slot corner. All right, so now let's go over the practice squad additions made today. Of course, yesterday was final roster cuts. Today was the waiver wire deadline, and practice squad additions have been made. The Steelers made 12 of them in total today, so let's break them down one by one. Braden, my biggest surprise cut from yesterday, did come back to practice squad. He was a monster in the middle as a run-stuffing nose tackle. I expect him to be on the 53-man roster for at least a couple of games this year just because injuries are going to happen. I think he's that first guy on the practice squad on the defensive line that they're going to bring in. Then they also bring in Kellen Diesch, the offensive tackle, formerly with the Chicago Bears, athletic guy. My source here at Chat Sports, our Bears host Harrison Graham tells me that he's an athletic guy, but his upside is probably as a backup swing tackle. So keep that in mind. Joey Fisher, the interior offensive lineman, was also added today. Former starting cornerback Anthony Brown with the Dallas Cowboys was picked up by the Steelers today for their practice squad. So that's definitely probably the biggest signing outside of the room or outside of the building for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Then you're also bringing back Luke Barku, Greg Bell, and then there's also some more guys here. This is the same graphic, Mr. Chugs. Then we got the other one here. We got Dez Fitzpatrick, the wide receiver, Jonathan Marshall, the defensive tackle, David Perales, the outside linebacker that had a really great final preseason game against the Falcons. The hard-hitting safety, Trenton Thompson, is back. I'm really happy that he is back in the fold here. Rodney Williams, not Zach Gentry, gets the practice squad invite here. And then Nick Kwiatkowski is also on the Steelers practice squad to start the 2023 season. So those are the 12 guys. There's 16 spots, so the Steelers could, in theory, still add to this list, but that's going to be it for today's show, guys. Really do appreciate all the support. Make sure you click that subscribe button for more Steelers news updates all season long. If Omar Khan makes another move this week, we're going to have you covered. So if you don't want to miss those moves and you don't want to miss our coverage here, make sure you click that subscribe button right now.